Greetings, everyone. Steve, Paracords of Kindness. How you doing today? Hopefully your weaving's been happy. Okay, what I have for you today is by multiple requests. I had a gentleman say, please tell me you're going to do a deep cut and give all the tips and tricks because that thing looks awesome. What I have for you today is how I make a stitched 2-color snake knot bracelet on a buckle. Okay, this one is very tricky. Everything I've ever said in all my videos, all the little tips and tricks and tension, consistency, all that stuff comes to bear on this bracelet. I'll be honest, mine is not perfect. But if you're mindful and you pay attention, you can produce one and it will look good. But here's one I've done. This is the one I posted that everybody liked. Olive drab, maroon, and gold. The one we'll be working on today is more of a the last son of Krypton theme. For those who know, burgundy, galaxy blue, and gold. But if you want to see how I do this, with all the tips and tricks that I can give to hopefully make yours look better than mine, because mine doesn't look all that great, but if you want to know, stick around because we'll get right to it, folks. Okay, everybody, I'm back. I'm set up. Let me say a few things. As always, let me say a few things. First off, this is going to be a deep cut by request. Okay. The gentleman, I posted a picture in social media earlier of one, and it's not perfect. The picture looks good, but in fact, it's not perfect. This one is very, very tricky. Hence his comment. This is what he says. He says, are you going to do a deep cut on this one? It might be nice to see some tips and tricks how you keep this one so clean. Beautiful work, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Not going to mention his name. I'll just leave it there. So when he watches this, he'll know who I'm talking about. This one is very tricky. I will say that. It's tricky to get it to, like he says, clean. Neat, clean, and tight. That's what I always say. And this right here is very tricky to get it to do right. And I don't do these very often. Most of the time when I do these, I do them in like a keychain thing. You know, simple. Burgundy and olive drab. Right? I did one the other day with the Superman theme. What is this? Indigo Night and Burgundy. And it's got a thimble. I'll say this, for anybody who doesn't know, you've seen pictures of this little piece of metal in here. That's called a thimble. If you're ever looking to get any of these and you're going to paracord, supplier sites and things like that, it's called a thimble. That's what you would, a rope thimble or, paracord thimble. You can just type in thimble in the various web paracord supply sites, thimble, and if they sell them, it'll come back. That's what they're called. But I did this one, diamond knot. I've had a few people ask me, what's that finishing knot? I said diamond knot. I just stitched it. And for copyright purposes, we all know what that is. But that's the crest of hope for those who actually know. That symbol stands for hope. But today we're going to do one, and I'm going to do it in kind of the same theme. Burgundy. This is a slightly darker blue in, what is this, galaxy blue. This is a new color to my arsenal. And I want to try this out. It's a little bit, I think this one's going to look good. It's going to look more like the modern costume, right? How it's the darker colors. And then we're going to do the stitching in gold. But anyway, it's similar. This bracelet we're doing today, a 2-color snake knot that's been stitched, is similar to this one, which is a stitched eccentric fishtail. Right? You can find the video. I don't have a tutorial on how to do the bracelet itself. But you can find them. Eccentric fishtail. It's a seedless weave, actually. You can find tutorials all over YouTube. But the stitching, I'll put the link in the cards and the description below on how I did the stitching. I think at the beginning of it, I kind of give a shallow cut, a very quick how you do the bracelet. But most of it is the stitching, because this one's kind of tricky too. But anyway, okay, let's see. With all that said, did that. Oh, I'm gonna say this too. Shameless plug. There's that. I'm thinking about getting. Actually, I'm gonna start trying to do some of these beaded bracelets. Right? I have a buddy of mine. He does these, and he's always asking me tips on paracord, and I've been asking him about this, getting into this, and I've ordered some beads and some supplies and things, and I hadn't actually done anything yet, but I'm gonna start doing that, and maybe that might be something else I add to the channel. But anyway, with all that said, let's see. Okay, like I say, this one can be tricky to do. The bracelet itself is not very hard. It's the stitching. The stitching can be the most confusing thing in the world. Okay? I'll say this. For those who have watched my videos, you often hear me talk about certain things. Just basic tips to help improve the quality, the look of your product. I always emphasize neat, clean, and tight. This bracelet right here brings to bear everything I've ever taught. You know, all the stuff I talk about comes to play in this. If you don't do it right, it's going to show on this bracelet. More so than anything I've done before. Now, like I said, I do not have this perfect. This one that I posted pictures of, it does not look as good as everybody may think it does. I'm humble enough to admit it's not perfect. And the thing is, just this bracelet, when you get it all, you know, you start stitching it, you get done, it looks like a daggum snake up there, and I'm trying to straighten it out to get a picture of it. You see how it's still crooked? It's just notorious like that. And it tends to want to twist. So if you have a jig, I recommend doing this one on a jig. Right? Okay. Now, with that said, I'll get to the tips and tricks thing in just a second. Let's see. Most of the time, you will see a snake knot bracelet done in a knot and loop closure. Meaning you have a loop on one end and a big fat knot, whether it be a toggle knot, diamond knot, whatever, on it. And that's how you do the closure. Me, personally, I don't like those bracelets. Why? Because you have this big knot that sits back here. And if it's a diamond knot, then you have that knot back there, and like when you're resting, like me, I'm often sitting at a desk with my mouse, that big knot gets in the way. You know, you can turn it, I get it. I just don't like those type bracelets. That's hence why none of my tutorials are done that way. I use a buckle. Right? Okay, now, with that said, I sat down, and I was like, let's put this one on a buckle. I figured all this out. It's basically a 2-strand core with your double cow hitches. Now, obviously, since we're doing it in 2 colors, you're going to have to meld the 2 colors together. You can either burn and meld them together, or you can do the manning method. On this one, I don't normally do the manning method, but on this one, I did. The manning method, in my opinion, tends to make a smaller connection. Meaning, when you go to burn 2 cords and melt them together, what you end up having sometimes is this big lump of plastic right there. That big lump will cause a problem on this bracelet. You can't see it on this one so much because I sat and I use the manning method on this one also. But what happens is you'll get that lump in them core strands, and when you go to wrap around it, it's going to cause a big lump in the bracelet itself. It translates out to these pieces, right? Hence why I'm going to use the manning method. There's your first tip, the manning method. If you don't know how to do that, I don't have a tutorial for it. Why? Because I don't use it very often. But you can go to any of the YouTube channels out there, Manning Method, M-A-N-N-Y, Manning Method. And it's a way of fusing 2 cords together, and it's strong. It's not going to come apart. But it can be a little tricky and a little difficult to get it to do right. And I've noticed this. If you have the correct fids to do this, it makes it so much easier. But if you don't have the correct fids, you're going to struggle with it. I know I did anyway. Okay, now there's that. Okay, let's see. What's next? Okay. All the little tips and tricks. Back to what I said. I know I'm kind of scattershot here. Excuse me. I know I'm kind of scattershot here. I'm trying to think of, like I said, it's not the bracelet so much, but all these little tiny factors, like any bracelet, all the little tiny factors come into play, but they do more so, I think, on this bracelet. Okay, you've heard me talk about, for example, if you're going to do your bracelet, and you know you're going to stitch it, don't pull it as tight as you normally would. Okay, now there's a caveat to that. That applies to me. Why? Because when I make a bracelet, I will pull it as tight as humanly possible. If the knot allows for it. Sometimes the knot won't let you do that, because if you pull it, it's going to capsize or distort the knot, and it like inverts in on itself, and it's no longer that knot. It becomes something else. Right? If it's one of those, obviously you can't pull it tight. But on the ones that you can pull it tight, and it's not going to capsize, I will pull it as tight as I can. Okay? And I've learned through experience, if you know you're going to stitch it, don't pull it so tight. Why? Because you got to get the needle through there. And you don't want it so tight, the stitching needle's not going to go through there. Right? So, for those of you who pull your bracelets really, really tight, don't pull it so tight when you go to weave it. Also, I know that when we weave one of these and we weave down, as we do parts of it, we push it up toward the top. Okay, that comes into play in this one. Because if you pull it real tight and you push it up like you do most bracelets, I know me, I'll push it up to push it toward the top buckle as much as I can. I'll put as much pressure on it as that I can to get it tight. I want my neat, clean and tight, right? I say that all the time. But this one, you can't pull it as tight, and you can't push it toward the top as tight, as much. Why? Because it's the same thing. It's going to cause it to be so tight and compacted, you're not going to get your needle through there. And the nature of the way this thing's put together, when you go to start running that needle through there, it's going to cause these wraparounds. You got a green or, whichever. You got one on one side, one on the side, and they wrap around. When you go to stick that needle through there, it's going to cause them to come up out of place, and you're going to have gaps. And I had them on this one. I had to come back, honestly, I had to come back and kind of flatten it back out and all that, all right? And I'll say this too. I'll throw this out there. Like I said, I'm humble as I can be about this. This is not perfect by any means. It looks good in that picture. I made sure it looked good in that picture, but when you start looking at it real close, you're like, yeah, it's not all it's because this thing is tricky. But most of it, the fact of it that it looks good in the picture is because before I took the picture, I sat there and I made sure that it looked good. You know what I'm saying? I made sure the sides were even. You always hear me talk about that. I'll get that in a second. The sides are even. I pushed it all in. I made sure all the little cords were in the right place. You see what I'm saying? That way the picture would look good. That's the majority of this one. Because it is hard to get this thing to look right. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard to get it to look right. But if you take your time, I know when I first started doing this, that was one of my issues. I would get impatient and want to finish the bracelet, and I would start rushing, and I would pay less attention to what I was doing, and the finished product wouldn't look as good. This is when you have to take your time and pay attention to the details, and remember all these little factors. Don't pull it so tight, don't push it up so tight. All these little things, they all come into play, more so I think on this one than any of the other ones, any other bracelet I've ever done. Okay, all right, now let's see, was there anything else I was going to mention? I'm going to say this, and I say this with all respect and as gentle as I can. I found only one tutorial on how to do this stitching, okay? And the channel that did it he has, you can tie the snake knot in the way I'm going to tie it, or you can tie it in this other way. It's kind of a quicker version of tying a snake knot, if you will. Well, that channel, he's got videos on how to do a regular snake knot like I'm going to do. But he's also got some videos on this quicker method of how to do it. Well, what happens when you tie it in that quicker method, you end up with a, I'm going to use the term he used, a double knot on one side at the top. Okay? And in his tutorial, all he has is the bracelet, and he shows you how to stitch it. And he mentions that double knot. And then he goes to show you how to do the stitching. And I sat there and watched that thing. And I didn't tie this in that method of snake knot he does. I do it in the normal, regular way. And I started watching him stitch that thing. And I thought to myself, and he doesn't mention in his video that he's used this other method. He just simply says there's a double knot up here. And if you don't know, because I've watched a lot of his videos, I knew what he was talking about. But if you don't know that, you will get lost in trying to stitch that bracelet. Because if you tie a regular snake knot, it will not stitch the way he tries to show you in the video, because he's tied that snake knot in a different method. And it's not going to work right. And I hate to say it, but with all respect, I think he should have clarified a little bit better in that whole get up. Because I sat there and watched it and I was like, I'm doing what you're saying, but this is not working. It's not going to do right. And then it dawned on me that he does it in that shortcut. I don't know what you would call it, just a different way of tying a snake knot, right? And I'm thinking, it's a snake knot. It's not that hard. There's no reason to take a shortcut, especially like this. Now, if you're doing one without a jig, I get it. But I'm doing it on a jig, so there's no reason to do it. But like I say, I say that in all respect. So if you try to watch that video and you're not aware that he's tied that, and it only affects that very top knot. The rest of it's the same. But when you try to stitching this thing is tricky as I'll get out anyway, to get it set up and to get it started. Once you get it started, it's great. You got it. But to do it, it's confusing. Right? And I'll say this. The stitching on this is two legs. You got stitching on this side and stitching on this side. Does that make sense? All these pieces that wrap around this side is one big long piece, and all these on this side is one big long piece. So it's two stitches. You see what I'm saying? But I think that's about all of it. Just all these factors. Pulling it, don't pull it so tight, don't push it up so tight, and tension consistency. If that's the other one. I forgot to mention that. That's the other one. Meaning, it's not that you have to pull a knot as tight as you possibly can. I know some people, they can't do that. They have medical issues, certain problems with their hand, whatever, and they can't pull them real tight. You don't have to pull these things tight every time. You don't have to leave them real loose. What you have to do is be consistent. If you pull this section, this repetition tight, the next one has to be just as tight. The next one has to be just as tight. It's got to be consistent. If you do it loose, tension. The amount of tension you use on this repetition has got to be consistent, the same on the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that also comes into play. I've seen people, like I've said before, in a lot of my videos, fishtails and trilobites are the ones that comes into play. That wraparound piece. If you pull it real tight one time, those two wraparounds will be real close together. And the next repetition, if you don't pull it as tight, they're going to stick out. And the sides of your bracelet will be boop, 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 boop. And it's like that on any bracelet, but it's more so on the fishtail and, the trilobite. And this one. This one. Right? So all these little tips and tricks and stuff in general that you've heard me talk about on my channel, they all come into play on this bracelet. Right? Okay, now, with all that said, keep all that in mind. Keep that in the front of your brain housing group and your forethought as you do this. Be conscious, aware of what you're doing. Do it. Look at it. Don't push. Don't pull it. Sometimes I know me. I get to going and I just start pulling tight and pushing, and I'm like, "Whoa, stop! You can't do it that way." All right. Now I'm not saying make it all loosey goosey, flippy floppy. No. Just don't pull it as tight as you normally would. That applies to me. Now, if you don't normally pull yours as tight, it's probably not going to affect. But this is one you might have to get some practice on. Now, I'll be honest. I'm going to do this, and it may not turn out great. It may turn out and look terrible. But I'm going to show you. I'm going to give you the tips and tricks, and I'm going to show you. And we're going to see. Hopefully it'll come out right. Okay, now, with all that said, like I said, it's a 2-strand cord with a double cowl hitch at the top and the bottom. You meld your 2 cords. And, you know, however you meld those 2 cords together, you want it to be a smooth transition. You don't want, if you melt them and put them together, you don't want it to be a big lump of melted plastic. You want it to be smooth across there. Many method, or just cutting or melting them together. However you do it, you want it to be as smooth transition as possible, right? Because that's going to translate to the outside of the bracelet, and you'll see it. But anyway, with all that said, I'm going to show you. Like I said, doing the bracelet is not the hard. The bracelet itself is not hard. It's the stitching. And the stitching's not hard. It's simply tricky to get it started. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. When I get to that part of the video, you're going to see me stumble and spit and sputter and stumble through this because it's confusing. And I have to look at it and make sure I'm doing it right. And I probably mess it up and have to undo it and do it again. But like I've said, I make mistakes. I ain't perfect. But hopefully, we can all learn from my stupid mistakes. You know what I'm saying? I'm the example. I'll be the butt of the joke if it'll help somebody learn. Okay, but snake knot. If you don't know how to do a snake knot, simple, quick, easy. Normally, your snake knots wouldn't have core strands. But that is the way this is set up to be done on the buckle. So you're doing them around the core strands, which is not hard. Okay, so let's zoom in. I know I've talked enough, but like I said, somebody asked for deep cut. He wanted the tips and tricks. I'm going to give you all the tips and tricks I can. And hopefully, in me doing this, it's going to help me remember all this stuff, too, as I'm making this. Because, like I say, this thing is tricky. It is. But we'll zoom in, and I'll show you. Okay, what we got here, I already told you. Red, or it's a burgundy and galaxy blue. Right? It's not very hard. You're gonna take this one. And we're going to come over the top of everything. And then we're going to come under. And we're going to form this little loop right here. It comes down. It goes over everything. And then it goes under everything. And then we're going to take this blue one. And we're going to bring it under everything. Over the top and down through this loop right here. And pull your excess through. And that's your snake knot. We see that. And you can push it up. This is the first one. So you kind of push it up, pull it, and that's it. That's a snake knot. And we're going to do that same thing all the way down this bracelet. Like I said, the bracelet itself is not that hard. But you got to maintain tension consistency. And when you push it up, don't push it up so hard. Don't pull it so tight, because we are going to stitch this. So again, we bring this one over the top of everything. Across the two core strands and across the other working end over here. Over across the top of everything. And then we're going to come around and we're going to form this loop. So we're going to pull the slack, all the excess through. And when you do this loop, you want this loop going upward. You don't want it down here like this. You want it up here like this. Now, when I first started doing the snake knot, that's something I kept remembering, and I finally realized, no, do the loop go upwards. So the loop's up here. Right? Now you kind of hold it, and you bring this under everything. and you come back up over the top, and you go down through this loop right here that you created, and you pull your excess through. Kind of a loose cinch. Now push it up. Now when you do these, make sure that you have the red on one side and the blue on the other side, the way they cross each other. Make sure that the next one kind of lines up itself, so that it kind of stays even. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this one, it has a tendency to want to twist on you. It will, you'll see it, and the bottom of it will want to twist around on you, right? But if you have it on a jig, not so much. When you go to take it off the jig and you start stitching it, that's one of the issues you'll see. And I'm telling you, like I said, I had to, once I got finished, I had to kind of manhandle that thing back in place and kind of get it all straight to get it straight for the picture. So, you know, that's just part of the way this one is, right? So as you do it, kind of, the way I'm doing it, it's going to twist it this way. So you're going to want to counter twist it back a little bit. Not much. You see what I'm saying? But make sure everything kind of looks the same. Push it up just a little bit and then just keep going. Forming our loop. Over the top of everything and then under everything. Forming this upward style loop, and then you pull everything through. And then you take this blue, and I'm going to reach under everything, grab that blue, go under everything, come back up over, and go through this loop and pull the excess. And then, bam. Kind of a loose cinch and push it up a little bit, not too much. Because like I said, we are going to stitch it. And that's it. Right there. And we just keep doing that. Now, like I do in a lot of my videos, I showed you this one's pretty simple. I showed you if you're still confused, back it up, watch it again. But I'm gonna just do it now, right? Like I normally do in my videos. Watch how my hands work, all that kind of thing. You might see you might pick up a technique on how to do it. Oh, something feels. Yeah, let me look at that. Yeah. You see how it slid down? Hopefully I can get this one to look right. And that's all there is to it. Right there. I mean, that's the basics, over and under and everything right there. You just don't push it up so tight to the top. And when you pull it, don't pull it so tight. But make sure it's consistent. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, this is something that it's unavoidable. The nature of the way these two here, let me back out when I say this. The nature of the way these two cow hitches are at the top and at the bottom, like here, I'll show you. Maybe you'll be able to see this if I back out. If you look down here, you see how you have this big gap between the coil strands? See, up here where I'm weaving, because the knot is pulling them together. But once you get down here to the bottom, they separate just because of the nature of the way these two cow hitches are. So you have this big gap. It's the same way at the top. So what's going to happen, I'm going to tell you, what's going to happen when you make this bracelet, it's going to be a little fatter at the top, and then it'll narrow down. And then when you get down to the bottom, it's going to flare back out. Does that make sense? And there's really no way to avoid it. Right? That's just the nature of putting it on this core, right? Now, that kind of works in our favor. Why? When we go to terminate these working ends, you know me, I'm going to put them on the back side. Well, it's kind of tricky on this one to get them on the back side and hide them and have a cut and burn on the back where you can't see it and it not affect the width of the bracelet. But because of these core strands, it's already going to make it look a little wide down here. So it kind of works in your favor. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. But like I said, you just pay attention to what you're doing. And you just do it. And that's it. I mean, that's all there is to this one. This part is not the hard part. Push it up a little bit. Pull it tight. And make sure all those little... The way that the red and the blue come together, it's going to have this little zigzag. Just kind of make sure it's kind of straight. It's going to want to twist a little bit. Just kind of look at it. And that's it. You just keep going. Okay, now, like always, I'm going to run this one out to the end. And when I come back, I'll show you how I'll end up. I don't really know until I actually get there. How I finish this one off and tuck it and do a rough cut prior to the burning, and then how to set up to do the stitching. Okay, so stick around. Let me get it weaved out, and I'll come back and I'll show you that. So with that, I'll be right back. Okay, folks, I'm back. I've got it weaved out. You can see I've got it weaved out to the end. And all I've done, nothing special, all I've done on this one is simply continue those snake knots all the way to the very end to fill up all the core strand. Now, like I said, because of the nature of the way these two core strands are set up on these cow hitches, if you look, you can probably see it. The top of it is a little bit wider than it is here in the middle. And it's the same way at the bottom. It flares back out a little bit, right? Because the two core strands are separated because of the cow hitches. So when you do these last couple of ones, you'll notice that, and that's just the way it is. Now you can try to pull them tighter, but you know, remember that's going to affect getting that stitching needle through. And if you look real close, let's see if you can see this. Right here where my finger is, maybe you can see here. I'll zoom in and I'll show you this. Back to what I was talking about when we melded our two colors together and we put them and they're on the core strand, and I said you want that meld to be as seamless as possible. Like if you just simply melt two pieces and put them together, you don't want it to be a big lump of plastic because it'll show, right? And I said that's why I was using the Manny method. Okay, if you look close, maybe you can see this. You see right here how these two little pieces right here look like they stick out a little bit further than the ones above it or below it and above it. It's because that's where that meld is. I know it's very subtle, but I just want you to see if you can see that. So just remember, when you go to meld those cords, if you have a big lump of hard plastic or your Manny metal, however you do it, if it's a big old, you know, you got your cord running like this, and where that meld is, it's a big old huge lump, you're going to see it. Now, I know it's very subtle, but it's there. I know where it's at, therefore I know what to look for. I know where to look, I should say, but that's why those two pieces right there look like that. But like I said, all I've done is just run it out to the end on a snake knot. Now what I'm going to do, this one right here, this red one is already kind of on the back side, and this blue one, we're just going to wrap it around to get it back there. I'm going to take it off this jig, and I'm going to look at it. I'm going to see exactly how I'm going to do this. Because like I say, a lot of times when you try to back weave these up into the bracelet, it causes that bottom side to bulk up, and it just, sometimes it doesn't look right. So let's take this off of the jig. I went ahead and got my fids on there. Get the jig out of the way. Now let me just look at this thing for a second, but I'll let you see it. Now see, I can look at it, I can hold it right here at this angle, and I can see that it's not perfect. Like I've said, I'm not perfect. If you look down at, look at like the stripe where the red and the blue meet, and you'll see how it's not straight. Right here it looks like it's messed up, and that's because, let's see, let me get this light over here so you can see what I'm trying to point out to you. But you see how this, where the red and the blue meet, there's a line that runs down it. If you hold it up at that angle, you can see that it's not completely perfect. Obviously, you can see how it comes down and it looks like it's twisted. Like I said, this bracelet tends to want to twist. That's one reason it looks like it's curving over this way. But right here with this blue, looks like it's out of place. That's because that's where that meld is. And that one right there, kind of out of whack, that's just me not doing it right. But it looks pretty good, pretty good. You see how the sides, like I was saying, the sides, tension consistency comes into play a whole lot on this one. Right? And the back of it, it's probably not as straight on the back. I wasn't paying as much attention to the back of it because, you know, that's going to be on your arm, underside, so you're not going to see it. But with all that said, I'm going to show you how I finish this one off. And then I'll show you how to do the stitching. Like I said, the stitching itself is not hard. It's getting it set up and getting your brain to go, okay, this is how I do this. Because it almost seems counterproductive. What I'm going to do, like I said, this red one's already kind of on the back side, and this one's, so I'm going to take this blue and I'm going to just wrap it around this edge. Now, the way I'm going to do this, let's see. Well, let me look at the other one. Where's the other one at? Let's see. I'm gonna try this. This may not work. It may not look right. You see how this red is coming around and it's going up under this one blue? I think what I'm gonna do is take this red and run it back up under that blue, but also under the next blue. Right? And then I'm gonna take this blue and I'll do the same thing, run it up under those two blue. What it's gonna cause to do is those two blues to puff out on the edge. But hopefully, we're gonna see. We're gonna see. So I'm going to run it up under this one. If I can get it to go through there. I'll do it over here on this side. See, I'll get up on that first one and I'm going to try to run it up under the second one. See that? Mindful of your twist. On this one, like I've said in the past, you don't want to have a twist in this when you go to pull it because that's going to cause it to have a big lump in there. Yeah, and it comes into play on this one. All those little things I've ever talked about in all my videos come into play on this one. All right. Now, see, it's causing it to get a little fat down there. Pull it, work it with your fingers, kind of smush it back in, and we're going to bring this one back around. Like I said, this blue, and we're just going to wrap it around. And I'm going to go up under these two blue just like I did with the red. But because the red is going up under right here, I'm going to take the blue across to the far side. That way that red and that blue are not overlapping underneath there, causing a big bump right there. If we do this just right, we can keep it all on the back side of the bracelet. I'm going to pull it toward me this way to kind of bring it back toward the center of the bracelet. See, and it causes, kind of causes the front to not look completely right down here. But, you know, that's the nature of a lot of the way most of these bracelets are. Like I've said before, the top part and the bottom part's never going to look completely consistent with the middle, the way the weave is. But we try our best. But now we got that, we're going to pull them a little tight. And for those who looked at the measurements, like I said, all the measurements and everything are going to be in the description. And I'm making this for my wrist, which is a 7-inch wrist. So you can see how much I have left over. Just over a foot of each of these cords. Now, to me, perfectly acceptable. I have no problem with that. Like I've said in the past, I'd rather have 7 feet of scrap to cut off and know I'm going to be able to finish this bracelet than to get down to the end and go, gosh, man, if I would have only cut one more foot, I would have been able to finish. Makes sense? Because to be honest, this cord doesn't cost that much. You get roughly 100 feet for $10, give or take. You know, got to break some eggs to make an omelet, so you're gonna have scrap. I know there's people who want it down to, I'm perfect. Yeah, well, one day you're gonna do it, and you're not gonna have enough to finish the bracelet, and that's the most frustrating thing. So we're gonna come back on this one. I'm gonna come back about 2 inches. And I'm gonna just cut them. The reason I do it this way, for those who, I've had a lot of people request this video, so I'm going to assume that they probably haven't watched any of my other videos, and I'll explain to you why I'm doing this. The way I'm doing it like this. If you know you're going to stitch a bracelet, don't ever cut and burn and melt it right there. Why? Because that piece of plastic that's going to get hard may get in the way of you running your stitching needle through there. So you leave it hanging. You know what I'm saying? Then we'll come back. You cut them to get them out of the way so you don't have these cords flipping and flopping while you're trying to stitch. But once you get done, you've stitched, everything's ready to go, then you cut and burn it all at once. Makes sense? That's the reason I'm doing it that way. Now if I can get this fit off here. And I always melt the ends of my cord. Unless they're just, you know, going straight in the trash because they're so short. But if it's going in my scrap bucket, I will melt it. And these are going to get melted also just in a second. I'll get to it. Okay. Those in the scrap bucket. Okay, now these two, like I say, I always melt these. Just the ends, just enough. I don't try to shape them or nothing like that. You saw how I did with the other ones where I kind of tapered them down. I don't do that with these because these are eventually going to just get cut off and thrown in the trash. That way, 1.5 inches or whatever it is. But there you go. Bam. I'm going to let that sit there and let it cool off for a second. I'm going to get a sip of coffee. Now, if you look at it, you see how the end of this buckle's at an angle? It's because it wants to twist, like I said. It's just the nature of this bracelet. But so far, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Now, we're going to do the stitching. And like I've said, this stitching, the actually doing it's not really that hard. But getting it started and wrapping your mind around what's going on so you don't get confused and you stick the needle in the right place, that can be confusing. Okay? So I'm going to try to explain this. I'm going to try to get so this will make sense. Okay, let's see. Like I said in the first part of the video, the stitching on this, the way I do it anyway, it's 2 separate stitches. You have one that runs down this side of the bracelet. And you have another that runs down this side of the bracelet. So it's 2 separate pieces. And in fact, basically what's going on is you have one piece that's just, if you look at your bracelet this way, the piece that runs down this side of the blue, all it's doing is corkscrewing down this bracelet. Same thing with the other one. It's just corkscrewing down the bracelet. Okay. Now, with that said, where's my, here it is. I've cut, like I said, the measurements will be down below. I've cut 6 feet for this first leg. And I'm going to do this side first, right here. Okay? Now, I'm going to, most of the time when I do stitching on a bracelet, I will anchor it on this back side. And like I leave this, like I left this hanging out, I'll do that with that piece of stitching. I'll leave it, you know, 1.5 to 2 inches hanging out. And then I'll go through and I'll stitch it. And when I get done, I'll cut and burn it right there. Well, on this one, we're not going to do the cut and burn. We are going to anchor it, but there's not going to be a cut and burn. So, I'm going to run this up under. Normally, you would run it up under a couple of pieces as an anchor and come out. Well, I'm going to run this up under more pieces than I normally would. Why? Because it's not going to get cut and burned. Okay? Now, here's a trick. Here's a trick, but it's kind of it can be tricky. This is what I do. All this stuff on this bracelet is just a little, you know, when you do the end of that piece of your micro cord, you know, put a little flame to it, let it melt, and you want it to have a little hard bump right there. But you don't want it huge. But you don't want it flat either. The reason I say that is because if you got it flat, potentially it's gonna, because I'm gonna run it up under these pieces here. Let me zoom in a little bit. I'll run it up under these pieces over here on this side, and it's basically gonna be sitting up under there like this. Well, if it's this piece of melted plastic's flat, you have the potential for it working itself out. But if you put a little ball on the end of it and pull it down in there just a little bit, that ball is going to keep it from wanting to come out. But if you get the ball too big, it's a big, huge lump of plastic, you're going to see it. And we don't want to see it. So it's kind of a happy medium. Alright? But what we're going to do, let me make sure I'm going to do this right. Like I said, when I get to this part, this is where I have to stop and look at what I'm doing to make sure. I'll even go back and look at the other one to make sure that I'm going to do this right. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to stitch this side first. Right? So I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to go back about 4 wraparounds and I'm going to go up under all 4 of them. And the way I do this, like this, I've mentioned this in some of my videos. When you're doing one of these bracelets like this, instead of trying to come at it like this and dig down in there, you can bend that bracelet and come at it. But on one like this, what I'll do is I'll run my needle parallel with these red cords. The red cords are running this way. I'm going to lay my needle right down in that crack that way and just kind of pop it down in there. And then kind of turn it. And you see how it automatically went up under that first one. Why? Remember, I didn't pull it real tight. But, like I've said in the past videos, once you start putting this stitching in here and running it down, it's going to tighten itself up. So we're going to go up under these 4. Mindful that you don't poke any of your cords. Which... Oh, excuse me. I felt that one coming. Let me make sure. It felt like I poked through something in there. Yeah, I did. I poked that blue. I poked the top of that blue piece. Excuse me, folks. Okay, but we're going to try to get this so I don't poke anything. Okay, yeah, I got it that time. But we see how I did that. All I'm doing is running up under those 4. Now, I'm going to push it through. Like I always say, take your thumb and kind of press those back down, and then we're going to just pull through. Now, when we get right here, as opposed to leaving some of this out like I imagine most of you normally do, or the way I do, and then you're going to cut and burn and melt it, you don't do that one on this one. You pull it all the way up to where you barely see it. And you're going to kind of take and kind of push it down in there a little bit. Now remember, we're going to have a piece of this gold wrapped right across the top of that, so you're going to want to get it down in there. Whoop, there we go. See how now you can't see. You can see. You can see where it went through right here. But now it's up under there. Hence why you don't want that big huge lump of plastic, because it's going to cause everything to get out of whack. But when we go to stitch, we got to be mindful we don't pull it out up here. Alright? Okay, so now here's where the tricky part comes. What we're going to do is we're going to run it. It's basically going to go right up here. You see where it's coming out? It's going to run right up here in this groove between this blue piece right here and this red cow hitch. It's going to run right in here in this groove, and it's going to go back down up under that first piece of blue. And we're going to come out right there. That makes sense? I'll do this so you can see this. Like I said, getting this one set up, this first leg, not that problem, not that big of a deal. But when you go to do the second leg, that's when the confusion comes in. So we're going to run it up under this first piece of blue. If I can get it to go up under there. Alright, we see that. And we'll pull our excess through. Mindful of the twist. This one, mindful of the twist. You can't have a single twist in this cord anywhere because it will be noticeable. Okay, now when you get right here, you see how you can see that gold? If you do it just right, you can kind of hold your thumb over here where it's anchored at, so you don't pull it out. Put some pressure on that thumb right there, and you can pull this, and it'll pull that gold down in there. Now, most likely, you're not going to be able to hide it completely. It's going to be there, but when you look straight at it, you don't see it. But when you look down, you'll be able to see it. Okay? Uh-oh, I felt that thing slip. We don't want it to slip too much. That'll work. Okay, now, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this piece of gold, and all we're going to do is wrap it around. And we're going to follow this is where it gets confusing, because if you look at this, I'll get this out of the way and I'll show you. You see how you have this blue piece and this red piece and this blue piece, and they're coming together and it's forming this zigzag between them. Okay, that's going to throw you off. That's what always confuses me. Do I do it this way? Do I do it this way? Where is it supposed to come out? Where it's at, you're going to follow the bottom part right here. And you're going to follow this little groove around underneath that first red piece. All the way around. Alright? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go up under two of these blues, and we're going to come back out over here. In the same spot, just one down. You're going to wrap it around. It goes up under the blues so you can't see it, and it comes out again. You see what I'm saying? It just corkscrews down the bracelet. So, I'll let you see where it's going to go. Right there. That's going to wrap around. And when it gets around here to this side, it's going to get tucked under these two blues, and then it's going to come out in the same spot, just one knot down. And it's going to wrap around. You see what I'm saying? And that's where the confusion comes in. You're like, well, what? You'll see. When you start doing it, just take your time and follow it and make sure you're putting that needle where it needs to go and look at it. Because like I say, even I still get confused trying to do this. But I'm gonna follow it around right here. This is the way I usually do it. I'll hold it up there like that, and I'll kind of put my finger on it. And I'll hold it at this angle, and I'll look to make sure that where I'm about to put my needle through here, back here, is going to result in it coming out where I want it to. Does that make sense? Because the way I do this is I'm going to come at it like on the side of the bracelet. Not the front, not the back, but on the side, and you can usually get it up under those two pretty easy. So I'm going to go up under right here. If I can get it started. Oh, it's under one, it's under the second one. And you see where it's coming out at. So it's going up under two. So every time you wrap it around, you're going to go up under two. And what that causes you to do is to come out at the one where it come out the last time. Going up under those two is going to cause you to come out at the one just below that. You see what I'm saying? And it can, like I say, it can be confusing. Till you get this pattern in your head of what you're doing, it's very confusing. Okay? So you got all this excess. Oh, sorry. You got all this excess, and all you're doing is wrapping around one. So you make sure you don't get all this stuff tangled around, because that's another part. You're constantly spinning this thing as you're wrapping it, and this stuff's going to get tangled up, and it's going to cause confusion. I'm telling you, it did for me. So just take your time. Just take your time and be patient with this. This is one that gotta get that twist out. You see that twist right here? You got to get that out. Now, that first part, it's not going to look very good because it's the top of the bracelet. But we get the general idea. Okay, now when you get it around here, if you notice, you see how it's coming out right here with this red meets. It's where it should be, but it's way over here. So what you do is you just take it. You just take it and you pull it this direction, back this direction, and that's going to cause it to kind of seat over there where you want it to. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Well, now again, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the bottom of this red cord. So this bottom part where it's this little angled where the blue and the red meet, you're going to leave that empty, because that's going to be the other side, the other leg of stitching. So we're going to follow this part down here, and we're going to wrap around right here in this groove. And we're going to do the same thing. And because they're so tight up here, it's not going to be, it's going to look like they're bleeding together, I know. See what I'm saying? There's a very tiny gap between these two gold pieces. But once you get down a little bit, it'll work itself out and it'll look right. Alright, we see that, we wrap it around. When you get it right here, kind of give it a little snug. But when you tighten it up, here's something that will come into play. When you go to tighten this up, you don't want to tighten it too much, because if you do, what will happen is it will cause that micro cord to go in between those two pieces of red. It'll fall down in that crack. And what you'll have is some of them will be down in that crack and you won't be able to see them, and then some of them will be sitting up on top of it where you want it. And when you look down the bracelet, it's not going to look right, because some of them will disappear in the crack, some of them won't, and you got to be mindful of that. It's all these little things that come into play on this one. But kind of pull it and give it a little snug. And you know, you can reach up there like me. I'll reach up there with my fingernail and kind of take out gold and try to move it up and down to see how loose or tight it is. Okay, that feels tight. It's not loose that I'm gonna reach up there and I move it and it's gonna cause it to go boom. It's gonna fall out of that. It's gonna move out of place. No, it's tight enough that it's gonna stay there. All right. So again, we're gonna do that again. We're gonna follow that groove around below this next red piece. And again, we're gonna get to where the blue is. And we're going to go up under two blues. So I'm going to come at it like this. I'm going to stick it up under there and kind of get it at an angle right here on the side of the bracelet. Now be mindful. If you get it started up under there, you can usually get it to go up under there. You see what I'm saying? I'm coming out right here just to get it up under the blues, but ultimately I want it way over here. All around this side, and see, again, it adds to the confusion. See what I'm saying? We do like that. I've got to make sure all this stuff is wrapped the right way. So when I pull it through, we ain't got no twist, we ain't got nothing crossing where it's not supposed to, and all that, because it's going to wrap around this side as we pull it. See how it's wrapping around like we want it to. Because if we get it up around the buckle and all that, yes, it will confuse you. You'll stop and go, I know I do. I did. I still do. But see how, like I said, on the front it doesn't look that bad. But back here, because just the nature of the fact that it's the very top of the bracelet, this gap right here doesn't look right. See, it's wider on this side between these two golds. It's wider than it is back here. That's just the nature of the way it is. But we got it up under the two blues. And we're going to wrap it back around. And we're going to pull it to get it over here. We're just going to pull it. Kind of smooth out them blues. Because every time you run up under them blues, it pulls them out of place. So you got to kind of push them back down, smooth them back out. But once you kind of get the idea of how you're doing this in your head, it'll take you a minute, because like I said, you're constantly spinning this thing around. And stuff wants to get twisted, knotted, and you just be careful. Take your time. Be patient. Don't get frustrated with it. Just be patient. But once you do it 3, 4, 5 times, you'll go, oh, I got it. And you just start doing it. Right? But that's all there is to this one. We'll take it, lay it right there where you want it, below that next red piece, and follow it around, and it goes up over the blue. You see what I'm saying? And you're going to go under the next two blues. You see that? And you just push it through. Making sure so I don't have any twists in it. When you go to pull it, make sure it falls down in that groove where you want it. pull it a little bit, and wrap it around that front, and pull it so it'll come out where you want it to. And that's all there is to it. Once you get the mechanics of how this thing works, you just do it. It can be confusing because you're wrapping around and these little zigzag pieces where they two come together. You're like, where do I go? Where do I put it? Go up under those two blues, and you come out. Now, this one already, I can tell you already, it just does not look pretty because. But we're going to continue on. But that's it. Now I'll stitch this out, and all you do is you just run this one out all the way to the end. You see how it's twisting? See how that bracelet's twisting on you? See what I'm saying? But you just run it out, you stitch all the way down this side of red, you run it all the way out. When you get back to the end, what I'll do is, however, I'll get it run, and then I'll run the end of this gold back up under these two. That way it'll be in the same spot as these other two. Right? And when I get done, I'll show you that. I'll come back and I'll show you that, and then I'm going to show you how to start this other side. And they can be confusing too, because you're going to be wrapping in the opposite direction. Your mind's done got used to wrapping it this way. And when you come back to do the other side, you kind of have to reverse everything in your mind and adjust to start doing it on the other side. Does that make sense? And that's what I'm saying. This second part is the more confusing part. But I'll finish this out and I'll come back. Okay, folks. I'm back. I got it stitched out, as you can see. Now, I just want everybody to see this. I want everybody to see this. I had a lot of comments, compliments, appreciate them, on the picture of the one I made, the other one that I made. And I told you, I said, that picture makes that thing look really well. Why? Because I took the time before I took the picture to make it look straight, to even it all out. Now, I want you to see this one. I haven't done any of that. Look at it. It just doesn't look even. It's all, you see how the bracelet itself is all wavy and curvy? It's because I've been manhandling it to stitch it. It just, if you look at it, let me zoom in a little bit. Maybe you can see some of what I'm talking about. If you look, let me bring this light over here. If you kind of look, like when you go to do it like this and you wrap it, it opens up some of these pieces. But what I'll do is I'll come back with my thumb and I'll kind of press that gold kind of down in that little crease, and it'll make it look right. But before I go to take the picture, I'm going to straighten this thing out, right? Just so everybody knows, I am not perfect. And like I said, this one is a very tricky one to do. Now, to be honest, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. But it is a tricky one to do. But like I said, be patient. Take your time. Don't get frustrated with it. And just take it slow. And all the little things I've said come into play. Just be mindful and take it slow. And it'll look good. Okay, now, what I've done. Now, you see the bottom down here because, like I've said on a lot of my videos, the top of a bracelet and the bottom of a bracelet never are going to look consistent with the way the meat of it looks. Just the nature of the way it is. Okay, so this one, all I did was the same thing. I just wrapped it up under that red, wrap it around, and it just runs up under that first piece of blue. Or that one piece of blue where we put the other two, right? That's it. And I'm gonna cut this off, leaving you some slack as always. And I'm gonna melt that. I'm gonna try to smooth it out, just melt it. And that piece right there. Now, like I said, I told you I cut 6 feet of gold, and that was cutting it a little close for me. I would have rather had a little bit more scrap, because I got down going, am I going to have enough? Am I going to be able to finish it? So this next piece, I've cut a little bit more. Okay? I think I cut about 7 feet. Now, that right there, too short to do anything with. Okay. Now, get everything out of the way. But again, like I said, see how it just, bam. It looks okay, but it's not perfect. If you look at it, you can see some of these pieces over here, the gold, like right here, there's a big gap between this piece of gold and gold above it. And then right here, they're real close together. It's just the nature of the way this one is. I'm telling you, it's hard to get it to look right. Now, I'm going to show you how to do the second leg. We're going to do it the same way, but we're going to do it on the other side. So everything's going to kind of be flipped mirror imaged in your head. And I know there's a lot of these bracelets I do when I stitch, and you do one run of stitching and then the next run of stitching. It's the same stitching, but it's like a mirror image. You've done this so long that you got it in your head how to do it. And then when you try to switch over to do the other side, it takes it a minute for your brain to reprogram itself to do it the other way, because you gotten used to doing it this way. This run. Does that make sense? So just be mindful. Don't get confused. Don't get confused. But we're going to do the same exact thing. Okay? But on this one, instead of starting on this, the top where the red is, on the front of the display side, we're going to flip it over, and we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to start on this blue side on the back. And we're going to run it under about 4 of these things. Okay? Now, I've got my piece of cord over here. I'm going to bring it out. Like I said, the end of it, don't have it flat, but don't have a big, huge ball. Just have your little, and that'll keep it from wanting to pull through when we anchor it over here, because we're not going to cut and burn it. It's just simply going to be run under. And that's why I'm going to run it under 4. Normally on a bracelet, I'd run it under maybe 2 of these. But for this, because we're not going to cut and burn it, I'm going to run it up under 4. All right? So, with all that said, we're going to start. I'm going to show you this. Let me get this out of the way. Okay. So we're going to come back here. I'll zoom in. And we're going to do the same thing. Okay. We're going to come over here to these blues. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to go up under. And I'm going to turn it sideways just like I did the last one. I'm going to lay that needle like this. I'm going to pop it down in that groove. And I'm going to just kind of turn it sideways. Alright. I'm going to just work it up under there. Be mindful, because now when we're doing this side, we're not only having to deal with the blue cord and the red cord, we're also having to deal with that piece of micro cord that's up under there that you can't really see. So we don't want to jam it through the cord. See, I can tell right there, it's already wanting to go through that blue cord. It's pierced that blue cord, so I'm going to back it out. I'll try to get it up under there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. See what I'm saying? And we're just going to... It feels like it's went through it again. No, it's just kind of tight right there. Push it through. Okay. Like I always say, once you get it through, reach over there and push it with your thumb. And more so on this one, because you do not want to pull this piece all the way up through there. So be careful as you pull this. Do it slow. And you're going to get all these tangles and twists. Get all that out as you pull it. Make sure there's not a knot in it. Okay, there's no knot. And we pull. Okay, and when we get to the end, we're going to pull it. Be careful. When we get right there to that end, just kind of push it down in there. Don't pull it too much. You can see that little globule. Is that the word I'm looking for? The little bulb of plastic. Kind of push it down in there. Alright, so it kind of disappears. Okay, and then we're going to do this one the same way. What we're going to do, like we did on the last one, it's coming out right here. We're going to go over the top of this piece of gold and over the top of this piece of red, and we're going to go up under this piece of red here, and we're going to come out right down here. And we're going to follow this blue groove around. Okay. Up under the red, you go over the top of them here, but then when you go up under it, you go under the red and under the gold. And get it started up under there without piercing anything. Okay, we see that. That's going under the red and under the gold. And we're just going to push it through. Get a hold of it with my finger. Okay. Now, again, like we did last time, before you go to try to pull this thing tight, reach over here with your thumb where it's anchored up under these pieces and put some pressure on it so it doesn't. So when you pull this, it doesn't pull it up out that side. All right. And you see how you can see it right there. Now, granted, this is the non-display side. This is the back side of the bracelet, so it's not. But pull it, right? Okay. Now, let's see. If you could kind of picture this without the gold on this side that we've already done, and just think back to the way you did the other run. It's going to do the same way. It's going to come around, follow below this piece of blue, and it's going to run up this way. I'll zoom in and hopefully this will make sense. So this is the front of the bracelet. This is the side we're going to see, right? When it wraps around this way, it's going to go up above this piece of red, and we're going to go under the two reds over here. See how I told you before, I told you this zigzag where the red, or where the blue and the red meet down through here, you get this zigzag pattern. The one we've already done is following the bottom side up under that red. Well, the one we're doing now, it's going to follow, and it's going to come on the top of this zigzag part right here. And it's going to go up under the red here. Does that make sense? Like this. So I'm going to turn it sideways like I did. Make sure I got it in the right place. And I'm gonna go up under both these two reds and these two golds, under all of them. So we see that? It's going up under all four of these. Two reds, two golds, under. I stress that. And you come out. Make sure we're not wrapped. See how it's wrapped around this buckle? You want it up here on this side. And we're just going to pull it through. Make sure there's no twist in it. See, it's got a little bit of a twist. We're going to get that out. And see how it falls into place where we want it. And again, when we spin it, like I showed on the other one, see where it's coming out at? We want it to come out over here. So all we're going to do is pull it back this direction. Right? And again, if we look, we're going to follow this blue, below the blue piece. We'll follow it around. And just like last time, we're going to go up here. Like this. Turn it sideways. And we're going to go up under this red. Again, under the two reds and the two golds, underneath all of them. This is why in the beginning I was talking about don't pull it so tight, because it will make this difficult, and what will end up happening is that you will poke or pierce through one of these other cords with your needle. Now I'll say this, I've said this in some of my past videos, I'm thankful. I got these stitching needles from Paracord EU, and they are blunted. And when I say they're blunted, they are blunted. And the diameter of this stitching needle compared to the ones that I had bought from Amazon and the various US Paracord supply places, the diameter of this was smaller. This needle is so much better than those ones, any of the ones I have ever found sold in America. I'm going to just say it like it is. And it makes it so much easier for stitching, because I do a lot of stitching. For those who follow me and you see my work, you see I stitch. First thing I do a bracelet, especially if it's one I've never done before. First thing I do is take out this needle and I start going, where can I find the chinks in this armor? And I start poking, trying to figure out how I can stitch it. But see, up under the red and the two golds. I'm going to pull it through. Get all that up here. I'm pulling it through. Just be careful, be mindful. When you get down to the end, see how it's all twisted up right here? We got to get all that out. Oh, I'm doing it the wrong direction. If you see what I'm doing, I'm spinning it with my fingers here. It counteracts this twisting up here. Right? You can get it where you want it. Put it right there where you want it. Tighten it up a little bit. And you don't want to pull this one real tight, because again, it'll fall in between those two blue pieces and get lost, and you don't want that. We want to be able to see it. So we pull it a little tight, and we spin it, and then we pull it this direction to get it to come over here where we want it. See that? Now I know, like I said, it doesn't look very pretty. Thankfully, this is the back side of the bracelet, right? We're more so concerned with the front, but see how it's just, these golds don't look evenly spaced. Yeah, that'll be the problem on the front too in certain spots, but we're going to do the best we can. Now again, we're going to follow below this next blue piece right down here. Follow it around. And we're going to go through right here. Under the red and the gold. And I'll tell you, this second run is harder. It is harder, because not only like I said, not only you got the blue and the red, you're also having to deal with stitching over, around, under, all that, the gold pieces too. Be mindful when you do this, look at it and make sure you haven't pierced anything. See, I have poked through. There we go. And as you do it, you know, you got all this excess you're pulling through. As you do it, that excess gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and it will become easier to manage. All right, I want to make sure it falls into that groove. We kind of give it a little, pull it a little bit. You don't want to pull it too tight. Don't want it to get sucked in between them. Falling. We don't think it's falling into the crack. Not on this one. We flip it over. We pull it. Right? And then we just do it again. And right here, this one right here, if you look close, you can see it. That's where that's where it's anchored at. That little piece of hard bubble plastic, it's right there. So we're just gonna cover it up. We'll follow it around. Follow it around. Hold your finger there, that's the way I do it, to make sure I'm going to keep it in the place I want it and just kind of move it out of the way and go up under it. Under the red, under the gold, under the red, and under the gold. 2 reds and 2 golds. Be careful that you don't pierce anything in there. And we come out and we pull it. And I'm going to tell you, as you're doing this, it's going to cause these pieces that you've stitched under to get all out of whack and look crazy. You'll have to come back. Like I said, before I took the picture, I went through and made sure everything looked good. But as I'm doing this, I'll do it too. Once I do a little bit of it, get the twist out. I'll spin my fingers right here. So it has spinning this up. Sorry, let me do that again. I'll show you. See how it's all twisted right here? If I reach down here with my fingers, when I go to pull and I spin it, see how it kind of counteracts that twist. And then when I pull it, I make sure it's going to seat down in that groove, in that crease between them 2 cords where I want it. Just give it a little snug, not too much. And then spin it over and pull it. If you look, yeah, you don't see it so much. But like I said, like I was saying, as you stitch up under these pieces, it's going to cause them to get all bent and out of whack. And you just come back kind of with your fingers. This is what I do. And kind of press on the front of it, and it'll cause those gold cords to kind of seat down in those grooves where you want them. Makes sense? And that's all there is to it. Now, like I say, it doesn't look very pretty. If you look at it, honestly, if you look at it, the space between this piece of gold and this piece of gold is huge. But the space in between these 2 pieces of gold is small. Just the nature of this weave. It's tricky to get this one to look right. But once you get it finished, you can come back and kind of manhandle it a little bit. Which is what I'll have to do to make the picture look really good. But once you actually go to get it made and you wear it, when you flip it and do it like this, you're only going to, you got it on your wrist, you're only going to see this much of it. It's not going to be laid out there in all its, it's not going to be laid out there flat like that in all its glory for somebody to see all the way up and down that bracelet. And see all the little tiny imperfections. When you actually wear it and put it on your wrist, the little bit they can see will look good. Whatever section it is. You see, does that make sense? Kind of an optical illusion, a cheat. I don't know how you would label it, but you lay it out there like that, that thing's all curvy, nothing's even. But when you put it up there for a picture, it looks good. Now that one, if you follow me on social media and you see it where I always lay it out like that, That's the one that's tricky to get that picture to look right, because the things won't be spaced evenly. But that's all there is to it. We're going to follow it around again. I'll do it one more time. Follow it around again. Hold my finger. And go up under the red. If I can get it up under there. Under the red, under the gold, under the next red, and under the next gold. You can come out. Push it through. Make sure it's where you want it. And then just kind of pulling it. Spinning it over. See how it's coming out way over here? We just pull it. And it pulls it into place. And that's all there is to this one. You just got to be mindful. You see how it's not straight back here? This is a non-display side. It's not straight. Now, granted, we would want that to be straight, but we're not so much concerned about that. We're concerned about having this front look right. And before it's done, I'll have this thing looking decent. But that's all you do. You continue stitching it out all the way to the end. When you get to the end, you do just like it is. Now, just be mindful. When you get down here to the bottom, because you got all this right back here, don't let it throw you off. Don't let it confuse you. But stitch it out, being careful, and you'll run it up under the backside. When I get down there, I'll come back and I'll show you that part. And we'll do, like always, I'll do the trial by fire, because like I said, I'm making this one for my wrist. So we'll get it all finished, and we'll put it on my wrist to see if I've got this thing measured out right. And we'll see what it actually looks like when I get finished. But stick around. I'll be back, and hopefully all these tips and tricks work for you. And you make one that will look good. And like I said, don't be so hard on yourself with this bracelet, because I can't get this thing perfect. Just the nature of the way it is, everything comes into play, and all this stitching running, it accentuates any imperfections you have. So, don't expect it to look perfect. It's not going to. Mine does not look perfect. And, no offense, yours is probably not going to look perfect either. So don't be so hard on yourself. Just be careful, be patient, pay attention to what you're doing, be mindful of all the little tips, and you get it to look as good as possible. Does that make sense? But I'll come back when I get down to the end. I'm going to finish this off. But stick around. Okay, folks, I'm back. I got it stitched out. Now, I'm going to show you this again like I did. I got it stitched out. Now, you see how this thing's twisted. You see how this buckle up here is laying like this, and the buckle down here is laying like this. Snake knots. I was just talking to a buddy about it. He said snake knots tend to twist when you pull them tight. I said, yes, I know. But it gets twisted. And like I was telling him, the stitching on this bracelet, it will accentuate. It will bring out every imperfection and make them more noticeable if you didn't have the stitching. So, like I said, don't be so hard on yourself. If you don't get it to look perfect, it's most likely not going to look perfect. Just like mine does not look perfect. This one is tricky. It's very tricky. It looks okay. There's a couple of little spots, like right there. If you see where that gold, I pulled it just a little too tight, and it went down in between those two pieces of red. So it kind of disappears. And I've tried to fix this, and I can't get it to do. Let me see. Let me try this one more time. What I'm doing is running up under that piece of gold and trying to pull it up out of that crack, and then press them two pieces of red together. And that kind of helped a little bit. But we see how, just look at the bracelet. It's not straight. It's all. Well, that's because I've been manhandling it, twisting it, and stitching it. But once I get done and I'll go to take the picture of it, I'll straighten all that out, you know. But it's not bad. It's not perfect. It'll work. It looks about like the other one. It's not perfect by any means. But like I said, when you have it sitting out here like this and you see it in all its glory, yeah, you see all kind of imperfections. But once you put it up there like that, see, it looks pretty good that way. It's because you can't see the whole of the bracelet. So, you know, don't be so hard on yourself if it doesn't come out great. And I'll tell you, I've made a few of these in my paraquedologist career, if you want to call it that. And I have yet to get one to look perfect. I just can't do it. I can't do it. But I go with it. But okay, we're going to finish this out. We're going to do the trial by fire and all that. What I got going on is I'm down here to the very last bit. And all I'm going to do, again, is follow this piece of blue around. Like I said, don't let all this right here throw you off. How it wraps under. Just do the stitching like you would. Just don't let this stuff confuse you. So we're going to wrap it around. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. I'm going to finish this off. We'll be done with this one. Follow it around. And I'll say this. On mine, when I got down here to the bottom, on both sides of the stitching, both runs of the stitching, it got a little harder to do what I'm about to do, where I'll run it up under these red and gold. It's a little harder because it's just a little bit tighter down here. So, you know, just be mindful. Take your time. So we're going to go under these two, this red and this gold. Now I got this. We're going to see if I can't get it under there without poking through anything. Here, let me bring my light around so I can see a little bit better. I can't tell if it doesn't look like I've poked through one of those cords. I can't quite tell. It's hard to see because it's up under everything. So we'll pull the slack out. Get it to go where we want it. Pull it. And now we're going to come around here. Did I do it right? Let's see. This is what I'm going to do. If you look, see where it's coming out? It's coming out on the front. I went up under the red and the gold. You know, I had to turn this way. So let's hold it back over here. It's orientated again. Went up under these two red and these two golds, and it's coming out over here. And normally, I would just kind of wrap it and pull it, and it would come over. Yeah, it's not going to do that because this is so tight right here at the end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spin it around this way. And this one piece of blue cord right here, I'm going to run it back up under that. My goodness, this won't pierce through that. There we go. Up under that. That way I can get it to go. Here, let me do this. I'll pull it through. I'm going to see if I can't get it to tuck up under there so you won't be able to see that piece. Yeah, it's probably not going to work very well. Yeah, tuck it up under there. So like, hopefully you'll be able to see this. Let me bring this light up and you'll see what I've just done. Okay. You see how right down here in this little groove, you can see a piece of gold the way it was when it was sitting like this. You could see it. What I've done is I've run it up under and I pushed it up under there to hide it, so you don't see it on this front side. And now I'm gonna give it a pull, and it's gonna pull it up there. Now you don't see it at all, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna follow it around this last piece of blue. See what I'm saying? And we're gonna get that last one in there. And I think what I'm gonna do here is run up under this red and this gold, and I'm gonna just go in between these two cow hitches and come out here in the back somehow. I think that's what I'm gonna try to do. I'm gonna see if this is gonna work right. Get it up under here. Yeah, up under there and there. And that's gonna give us that last little wrap following that blue piece. Kind of pull it tight. Tighten it up a little bit down here at the end, because it tends to want to come loose as you're manhandling it and stitching it and all that. And I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to go right between these two cow hitches. I'm going to come out on the back somewhere. I'm going to just grope in the darkness and stick it through here. Hopefully when I pull this, it's going to, yeah, it'll disappear. You won't see it. Alright, now we're just going to run up under this gold and this blue and come out like this other one is. We see that? Push it through. Alright. I'm gonna go ahead and cut this piece. As always, even though I'm about to cut it off anyway, I'm still going to, boop, like that. And that piece right there, yeah, I might be able to save that. Let's give that a little, right there on the end. Might be able to use that down the road somewhere. Most likely not. I have so much scrap that I never use. Okay. Now, we'll put our needle up. Now, this is the fun part. Now, we look at this thing. We see how it's all twisted, and it's all bumpy and lumpy, and all that kind of stuff. Not so much worried about it right now. Kind of straighten it up. Like I said, it's going to twist on you naturally. So you take it and kind of twist it back like it's supposed to be. Look down here at the bottom, and like I said, as I've always said, the top of a bracelet when you start and the bottom is never going to look like the middle part. They never do. We try to make them look as best as we can, but they're always going to be off. And this one is a perfect example. You see this big red piece, and it doesn't fit with the rest of it. But we've done the best we can. But we're going to come back and we're going to try to tighten up that red piece. Tighten up this red piece, and it's going to pull this piece tight. That way it doesn't look so out of place. Now, because we did that, see that gold is, so we'll have to tighten it up. We got to tighten all this up. Before we cut and burn it, we're going to tighten all this up best we can to get it to look right on the front before we do our final cut and burn. So that's about as best as we can get it. But thankfully, like I say, this is the buckle. And most of the time, the buckle's on the back side. It's not readily visible. You see what I'm saying? See, this one's kind of the same way. It doesn't look right here at the end. But that's... Okay, now we got it. We're going to pull them tight one more time. One final looky-loo. About as good as we can get it. Now we're gonna cut and burn these. Like I've said, always have whatever your smoothing tool. I use the end of this. Right? Whatever you have it at the ready. So you're not digging for a while, because this is time sensitive matter. Once you burn this and get it melty, you don't want it harden up before you have a chance to smooth it out. And I'll say this, like I said, there's probably going to be people watching this video that have never watched any of my videos. So I'm going to tell you this. I'll get all these on the back side. On the bracelets. I'll try to get them all on the back side, and I will try my best to get them all in the same spot. You see how all these are right here together. So I'm going to cut them all at once, and I'm going to burn them all at once. The reason I do that is so that that burn, that piece of melted, molten plastic, will melt together and form one big piece. So they're all connected. The reason I do that is I know some of these bracelets, if you have a cut and burn here and a cut and burn here and a cut and burn here, over time, through wear and tear, eventually they can work themselves out, unweave themselves. But if you have them all terminating, cut and burned in the same spot, they all join into one big hard lump of plastic, and they're all connected. And there's less of a chance of any of that coming unwoven, because it's a big piece as opposed to all the individual pieces. Does that make sense? That's the reason I do it this way. Some people say, man, that's a big, huge, nasty cut and burn. Well, yes, but in the long run, it works out. And plus, it's on the back of the bracelet, the non-display side. You're not going to see that. Now, granted, you know, you flip it over, you're going to see it, but we try to make it look as best we can, even though it's on the non-display side. But that's why I do it that way. I've had people say, man, that looks, I'm like, when I explain it to them, they're like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. I see why you do it that way now. Okay, so we're going to do this. All that's going to go in the trash. And now, we got them all right there together. Like I say, don't manhandle. Don't start flipping and flopping. You got it right there? Bam. We're going to burn it right now. And I will get this hot enough that all four of those, you got a red, a blue, and two golds. I'm going to get them all hot enough that they all start melting, and all that plastic kind of melts together into one kind of liquidy lump. And we take it, roll across it. I'll have to do that one again. Let me do that one more time. There we go. Now when you do this, it'll cool off a little bit, obviously, but reach up over your finger and make sure there's no burrs or little hard pieces, because that's going to be the piece on the back side of your wrist, and that's the sensitive part of your wrist, and you don't want a little hard lump, teat, burr of plastic. See, I can feel something right there. I'm going to have to do something with that. Give me a second. Smooth that out. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, now we've got our bracelet finished. Now let's look at it again. And we're going to see, I'll let everybody see, it doesn't look perfect. It's not straight. The spaces between the gold aren't even, it's not evenly spaced down through there. It's not perfect. This one is tricky. It's hard to get it to look right, but we're going to do the best we can. And we're going to kind of straighten it out. Now, when I go to take the pictures, obviously I spend a little time and get it to look pretty good. But like, that's the back side. We want the front side. See, it looks okay. It's not terrible, but it's not perfect either. And you know, my wife, she'll say, you're a perfectionist. You do them things. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But on this one, I would drive myself nuts trying to get this thing to look perfect because it's so tricky. But it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Like I said, once you put it up like that, see, that looks good. It looks neat, clean, and tight. Everything looks pretty even and all that. But when you lay it out there in all its glory, not so much. And especially, y'all have seen me talk about this before. When you're making one of these bracelets, you can take it like if you got it on that jig and you turn it up like this and look down it. You look at it. You see how it's not all this gold is not evenly spaced. I said all the little imperfections show on this one. You could see it. But nobody looks at a bracelet that way. That's just for us who are making them. You can look at it that way and you go, man. And it'll point out a problem area. You flip it back up and you can kind of try to fix it a little bit. But for the most part, that one turned out pretty good. It turned out a lot better than I thought it was going to. Okay, now with all that said, we got to say a stitched 2-color snake knot on the buckle. Most of these are done with a knot and a loop. So, with all that said, let's see. Trial by fire. My wrist is a 7-inch wrist. We're going to see if we got this thing sized right. Go ahead and get it. Kind of shape it so it'll go on the wrist. Let's see. I have a feeling this one's going to be a little loose, but that's okay. Don't. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. It's a little crooked, but that's it. I can get my finger underneath it. Normally I want to get the tip of my finger, but you know, considering this is a tricky bracelet, we'll cut us some slack. Get a finger under there. It's not so loose. It's not so loose that it's flopping around. So, you know, we'll call that a fit. But there you go. There you go. That's how I make a stitched 2-color snake knot bracelet on a buckle. But hopefully there was enough tips. I know the video is probably going to end up being long. But for those who watch, if you pay attention and listen, be mindful of all the things I've said. Tension, consistency. Don't pull this one so tight. Don't push it up so tight because you know you're going to stitch it. Just be mindful. Take your time. Make sure you're stitching it in the right place. And as you do it, just kind of form it back into place as you stitch down. Kind of form it. And when you get done, come back and do it. Straighten it all up. And it'll look good. It will. But be patient. Most likely, the first time you do this, you will get frustrated. I know I did. So, just be mindful. Don't get frustrated. Be patient. Pay attention to what you're doing. And hopefully, it will turn out good. As good or better than mine. But, with that, I appreciate you watching. And I'll end this one like I end them all. Keep it neat, keep it clean, and keep it tight. Happy weaving, folks.